So welcome everyone to the November 15th event. I'm just going to remind everyone about our cyber defense website. We're updating this regularly, and I'm going to hand it over to Jay.
Thanks, Yair. I am in the unique position of being the host of this series as well as today's presenter. So I will ask myself some very softball questions. When the question and answer opens up, maybe you can ask some tougher questions of me than I will be on myself. But I am here today to talk about the NCAE Cyber Games. I'm here with my colleague, James Rice. I am the Dean of STEM at Mohawk Valley Community College. James is our lead faculty member for cybersecurity and has been a major part of this as we've gotten started. So I will share my slide deck. And please forgive me, I like to run in presenter mode. It's less problematic online. So yes, this is the NCAE Cyber Games project. We are from Mohawk Valley Community College in upstate New York, and we are working with the University of South Florida and Cyber Florida on this project. We are now a national project, but we were based on the CNY Hackathon, which runs in upstate New York every November. And the picture you see there is something that we're very proud of. That is not that all those students are looking at. That is one of their colleagues. So at the end of the event, we have each team stand up and talk about what went well, what went poorly, and anything funny that happened during the day. And we take a lot of pride in that report out session. We know that students learn much better from their colleagues than they learn from we as faculty members. And so that is we tried not to lose that as we scaled up this event to be a national event. We've been running the CNY Hackathon since 2013, and like anything, the more you run something, the more refined it gets. And we felt like we were ready to take this on a larger scale, and we have. So the NCAE Cyber Games is a competition with two main elements. One is we run a CCDC style infrastructure event. So what you see here is our network diagram for each team. The blue teams, each team gets everything inside that red box, and everything with the red skull and crossbones is a machine that our red team has built from scratch. And so there are already hooks built into those machines, and the red team has the advantage because our red team is a little more disciplined in how they attack. So typically it's a web server, it's a database server, it's DNS, it's their shell server. All of those are what they're looking to secure. Everything that's in black is an infrastructure element. It's a server or a service that's running out in the main competition environment that's managed by our neutral team, which we refer to as our black team. So it's important to note that all of these boxes are Linux. We like Linux because of its simplicity, its the ability to manipulate all of the different security mechanisms, and the ability to deploy as many as 200 virtual machines within a competition, which is what we sometimes are required to run. So we built this out. It's very robust. We run it on bare metal in the cloud for our large events. We run it on-prem for our local events. And it's been through a lot, and it's proven to be very resilient. So this is the infrastructure side of our competition, and our scoring engine monitors those services every 30 seconds and awards a point for when those services are online, and doesn't award any points for when those services are down. And I'll show you a little bit more about that soon. The second half of our competition is a somewhat traditional capture the flag, but we think we do it very well. Our capture the flag mastermind is Mike Lisi, and he has run events for DEF CON and a number of other major conferences in addition to the NCAE Cyber Games. Those are our main challenge areas: trivia, exploitation, crypto, and reversing. And we have challenges that range from very easy to very challenging. Our competition is designed for students who have yet to compete. And our attempt is to broaden the pathway into the other awesome competitions across the country. And most students that come to us are not ready to defend Linux machines from red team attacks their first time. And so capture the flag is where most students that are brand new to competing spend their time. And we were conscious of that and how we designed our challenges. Students have something to do all day long in our event, regardless of what skill level they arrive to us with. So more to come shortly about the how the competitions play out. But this is a good time. I think all of you are thinking, if these are new students to competing, do you just throw them right in? And that would be cruel. We don't do that. And my colleague, James Rice, really focused on that, on what can we do to support students. If this is their first competition, what can we do to get them ready so that they embrace competition and want to continue competing in the future? And that has kind of been his element of our project, is what we call the Sandbox. And James is going to talk to you about his process for that.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I'll piggyback on Jake's comments too of, a lot of how I got to where I was here was looking at and observing as one of the organizers, as well as one of the faculty members that had my own students competing at our local event. And I really emphasized what were some of the elements that worked well at our local event, because we'd been running it for years, and thinking, okay, as we take this local event and try to deliver it on a national scale, what are the things that we really need to build from a scaffolding perspective? And I took a step back and thought, all right, there's really two main characteristics of our event. And you have the staff and organizer side, and then you have the student side. And I thought, you really need to help prepare both of those elements to have a good competition. It wasn't just the students, and it wasn't just the preparation that kind of comes from a staff and organizer perspective. So I spent a bit of time working on both of those and saying, okay, what were the things that really made our local event work, and what do we need for the national event? And this was a short list that we came up with here that we kind of just casually call the Sandbox, but it encompasses a lot of things. So number one was we need an on-ramp to practice skills for the competition. And that's for both categories of people. Both the staff as well as the students need a little bit of practice with that. I definitely realized when I was a faculty member trying to advocate to my students to prepare, one of their first questions, or to join the competitions, one of their first questions was, well, am I prepared? I'm a first-time person. I've got cold feet about whether I should do this or not. And I needed to reinforce to them that, well, yeah, your classes are certainly helping, but they don't necessarily do the full story of what should you be doing to prepare for a competition. And so I certainly realized as a faculty that I needed to help with that on-ramp process as well. That's really where the Sandbox came out of. The other thing that I found that was very, very useful, that worked very well for our local competition, that we wanted to deliberately build into part of our national competition, was a lot of interaction prior to competition day. And so we leverage Discord very heavily at our local competition, and we leave the Discord server up all year long. And so when we had the national competition happening for the first time, a lot of that was like, well, we don't have that community yet. So what are we doing to build that community? And so definitely I spent a lot of time trying to think of what are all the different ways we can try to engage both faculty and students to prepare kind of in unison and together and have that communication, so we could replicate some of the things that were working very well locally on a national scale. So, okay, Jake, we can move to the next. And so that became very tangible in the sense of our on-demand Sandbox delivery of environments and of challenges. And these challenges are built in such a way so that any student could log onto the system, read the quick little how-to, or if they wanted to be a little bit more thorough and watch maybe a 10 to 15-minute video on what the scenario was all about, they'd be able to deploy different scenarios on their own. And as you can kind of see here, you just sort of work your way down the buttons. Even a freshman in college can kind of do this. And so that was something that we wanted to make as simple and as straightforward as possible. I found that this was a great resource for both students to go through and practice things, but also for faculty as well. So then the faculty could kind of have that reinforcement that, oh yeah, I am teaching things that are actually relevant for this competition, because I don't want to send my students to a competition that's really not appropriate for them. Or vice versa, the faculty could see, oh, well, these are some things they're going to cover at the competition that I don't necessarily cover already in the classroom. And so let me make sure that I emphasize the things that we're not covering, just so that my students feel more prepared and more comfortable participating in the national event. Okay, next. And the main element, like completely reoccurring, that I always saw from students was, well, I want to learn how to do this, but I don't know where to get started. Sadly, when it comes to hacking, especially with our event, as Jake just mentioned, we're very heavy on the Linux side. This is really the mentality that you have to take with students of, just sit down. You cannot learn enough Linux. You cannot learn enough networking. Just learn whatever you can. And that's definitely a good use of your time. But again, it is a bit daunting as to how do I go about doing that? And that's really what a lot of these challenges were meant to do. And so one of the answers to that particular pressure, kind of like the cartoon person there, they're sitting there sweating, like, how do I do this? It just seems like I have to learn everything all at once and I'm still new. I went and made a lot of YouTube tutorial videos. As of right now, we have well over 10 hours of content, and it has all of the content is broken out by chapters. It's all fully indexed. And so students can try to figure out which is the content that I might know, which is some of the content that I don't know, and jump into and complement the things that they need to learn. I definitely had a lot of students over the course of the competition that they would have this particular interaction with me where they'd go, okay, I've deployed something in the Sandbox. I don't really know how to solve this problem. And then they'd message me in Discord in that community. I'd be able to respond with them saying, here's a YouTube tutorial video that I made. Go check it out and see if that solves your problem. And then they were able to say, okay, hey, you actually had a YouTube video that completely answered that question for me. And that was awesome. And that really showed that end-to-end community that we were trying to build. When you look at how many people engaged with this type of stuff, you can see we definitely broke the 10,000 view mark just this fall. So lots of people were able to go in. You can tell by the graph which weekends we had our competitions. Every one of those spikes was a weekend that people were referencing a lot of those videos and going through that content. And so, just at the end of the day, it was try to find ways to support both the students and the faculty. And I'll say that the best thing that worked was giving the students materials that they could then share with each other, because there's certainly a lot more of them than there are of you. And so anything you can do to hand things over to the students that they can share with each other, that all worked really, really well. And so the Discord and the Sandbox, the YouTube videos, they've been quite successful at that. And that's been a big part of what we're really proud of with our national event.
Thanks, James. So that was the Sandbox, and I want to talk a little bit about what we call our special sauce. What is it about the NCAE Cyber Games that is special and would make you want to send your students to us? And the first is we'll talk about approaches. And so we have learned to manage the competitive element. These are students that are new to competition. We want them to engage with competition and stay with us and move on to CCDC and NCL and other awesome other competitions out there. So if many of you may have experienced that when you go to a typical competition, the red team is there to crush the students. And as an educator, I always really struggled with that, and I'm sure you do too. That when a student gets crushed and their machine gets destroyed, it's hard for them to know what they did wrong, how to do it better the next time. And also they often end up calling their parents to come pick them up. And that's not what we're trying to do here. And so luckily we've been doing this long enough that we now have a group of 14 or so really awesome engineers that previously competed in our event, our local event. And they're now our red team. And they really bought into the educational element of this. And therefore, we've built a structure where we very incrementally attack the student machines. We give them time to secure their machines before we hit them with the easiest to find vulnerability. We give them time to adjust to that before we hit them with the next hardest to find vulnerability. It's a very tiered and structured attack system that lets the students win. We want the students to win. And our red team will say that every single action that the red team takes can be mediated by the blue team. The blue team can win and get the red team out. And when they do, we celebrate that. And that's a different approach than most competitions take with regard to an infrastructure event. We also have the luxury, since competition is this an entry-level competition, it's less prestigious than others. Winning is not the only outcome. And so when we see a team that's really struggling, we have no problem backing off. And in addition to backing off on the red team, we also leave breadcrumbs for them. And the red team can tell students, hey, it looks like you're still struggling to get your web server online. Did you look here? And we can help them get to a point where they can secure that web server and get it online. And I think that's an approach that's very unique in the competition space and is also very appreciated by students. In addition to that, there's a lot of research and a lot of our experience that shows that not all students react to competition the same way. They're not all motivated by competition in the same way. And so we have de-emphasized the competitive element. It's still a huge deal to win our event. To work together all day long and win is a big deal, and we award them and recognize the winning teams. But we also allow each team to vote at the end of the day on their team's most valuable teammate and most improved. And we talk about those as the most prestigious awards in our event. That's the behavior that we want to see. That's what's going to allow these students to be the best cyber competitors going forward. And so though that recognition and those awards are the same value as winning. And when we think that that message gets through. We also lean heavily on Discord, as James mentioned. We have one engineer that is almost strictly our Discord environment manager. It's a really interesting and fun environment. Every team has their own Discord environment. The blue teams have private channels that the red team can't see. There are support channels for all the different teams that are available to students 24/7, 365. And we get lots of ongoing engagement where a team will reach back out to someone that they created a connection with and say, hey, can you help me with this thing that's not related to the competition? I just want to know. And we built some really enduring relationships that way. Continuing kind of our special sauce on the tech, what you're looking at is a condensed version of our scoreboard, which is very elaborate at this point. On the top, you see the rising bar graphs of points earned by each team. Blue are the infrastructure points, red are the CTF points. And then below that, on a horizontal line, you see each team's infrastructure. The top team is team 13. Their web server is down. Their router is pinging. Their shell server is up. Everything else is down. Their internal reverse DNS is misconfigured. Their MySQL is up. So the scoring engine monitors those services every 30 seconds. And so the students have a real-time view of how their team is doing with regard to all of their services. So that's a view of our special sauce and what makes us unique. This was our first year. We're entering our second year. So in the first year of the NCAE national competition, the NCAE Cyber Games, we ran regional events for each of the 5 regions of the CAE program on 9 consecutive Saturdays. We have a unique format where we run 2 side-by-side competitions because we don't want them to get too large. This report out session that you see on the screen, we were able to replicate that in an online environment across the country by keeping those mini comps, we call them, small. So there were 10 teams in each of those 2 side-by-side mini comps that we ran on Saturdays. And that allowed us to end each competition with that report out session where students from University at Albany can help students from Delaware understand how to be better at this. And they did. Those report out sessions were amazing. Grand total, we had 65 teams from 55 different schools and 450 total students participate in year 1. And we had 0 inappropriate incidents. Discord can be a less than professional environment in some contexts. In our environment, we didn't, and we had no instances of inappropriate behavior or posts or profanity or anything. And that really spoke to the quality of students we have in this CAE program, from my perspective. As we got towards the end, a number of schools made it to the national finals. We took 2 or 3 schools from each region that kind of earned it. The national finals were held online on April 9th, and the Illinois Institute of Technology took off. They won the event, and they were recognized at the Executive Leadership Forum for the CAE community in Biloxi this summer. And it was a really special event, and this team was special. We also experimented, and I think really nailed a live stream of our finals. James is one of the commentators you see on the screen there. I think James was the color guy, and the straight man was our partner from Cyber Florida. But they were able to visualize and announce and talk about our event throughout the afternoon, and all the teams loved it. There's a webcam at every school's lab, and they got to see each other throughout the afternoon. It was awesome. So talking about how wrapping up how our first year went, our colleagues in Cyber Florida made this graphic for us. So who won? Literally everybody. The students won, the faculty who sent their students won, we won, we had a great time. The CAE community won because 450 students are now comfortable with competing and ready to move on to another competition. And the student feedback was just honestly overwhelmingly positive. 96% of the students in our event said that we exceeded or met their expectations. And 91% of participants said that our event was helpful and relevant to their future career. And we're just blown away by that we did not expect those kinds of results. We always love to give recognition to, as I said, the most prestigious award in our competition. These are the 55 or 65 students who voted most improved across the country. And we will continue to recognize them every chance that we get. We are trying to expand the pipeline for students that may be less represented in our field, in particular women and girls. We did not do as well as we'd hoped with regard to how many women and girls participated in year one. Only 16% of the students that participated were women and girls. On the positive side, 22% of the total number of students, 22% of this list of voted most improved were women and girls. And so the women and girls were heard from, and we're really looking forward to having a little bit more of them present in year two, and we're working on that. I wanted to mention that we have a lot of partnerships for our event. The NCL, we've loved working with the NCL staff, and we have a lot in common with them. So we are doing a bit of a challenge swap this year to get students in each event warmed up to each other's event. We have the Western Region CCDC and the Northeast Region CCDC working with us on our red team and also working on pipeline tracking. I'm part of the assessment group at MVCC, so it's in my nature to want to know how well we're doing and assess our performance. We want to know how many students start with us and move on to the CCDC events and do well there. And so we're working on how we might track that. We have the Nice Challenge folks, who, as you probably know, are a very talented team of engineers helping us with our platform and our red team whenever we need it as excess capacity. We're working with the President's Cup put on by CISA to map to workforce-related competency, exercises and what those might look like to our students. And we're also working on evidencing competencies within our competition with the NICE group and Norwich's CAE initiative. What's next? We are building interactive team registration, and we hope to have that live as soon as next week. Team registration for our event opens this Friday. And so we're looking forward to having that up and running, where if everything plays out the way that we have designed it, team captains will be able to register their team, and then the captains will be able to adjust which students will be competing in real time rather than working with the organizers to configure their teams. As I mentioned, we had a wonderfully ethical event, but we're working on how to build ethics more deeply into the event. We found that lots of students they had a great event with us. They're not going to be ready to go to CCDC, NCL, Cyberforce quite yet. And so right now we're going to allow students to compete with us twice, and then we're going to refer them to events that more match their skills and their skill level going forward. And we're working on building those pathways, as I mentioned, into other competitions. So that was the lightning version of how our first season went and what we think everyone needs to know about the NCAE Cyber Games. And we are happy to take some questions. Yair?
Thank you. Wow, Jake, James, wonderful. I actually emailed my my team to get them to register. Sorry.
Appreciate that.
Go ahead. Should we continue the recording with the questions? Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, opening it up to any questions.
Hi, Jake. This was really, really nice. This is Adanison from Refn at Florida A&M University. Quick question. What does it take to get new students aboard from, let's say, Florida A&M University?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. We're glad that you like what we've done. So students from any CAE school can log on to our website right now and make their own account, and they have access to James's Sandbox right away. And we have some cool stuff in there where there's some really gamified approaches to learning how to do this. There are some practice challenge the flag exercises, but perhaps the most popular is what James showed, which is the ability for students to spawn their own virtual environment. And we have a mini scoreboard in there where their only job is to learn how to use the tech and get their router online. And as soon as they get their routing device online, the scoreboard lights up and lets them know that they've done it. And it's the kind of thing that students really should do a few times and really get the muscle memory that Dan Manson mentions down of this is how I use this virtual platform. This is how I log in and configure virtual machines, and the scoreboard shows that I just won. And so that Sandbox is available right now. All students can log in and create their own account instantly. As I mentioned, in about a week, maybe as soon as this Friday, team registration will be open for the year. And that's where your team captain or even yourself can go in and say, I would like Florida. I'm sorry, I hope Florida A&M is the correct school. Yes. This is how we would like Florida.
That is correct.
Okay, so you would just say we would like Florida A&M to have a team this year. Your original competition, your regional competition would be the Southeast competition. Those dates are going up on the website soon. And it should be a pretty easy thing to do. And I think your students will find that we are accessible to them in Discord for any questions whatsoever.
Yeah, I was going to emphasize that as an add-on to what Jake said of as soon as they make an account on our website, they can jump in our Discord server and link those accounts. And then we know who they are. We can help them and go just direct them in whatever way that they need direction. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Zoe, do you have a question?
Hi, I do. It's Zoe Fowler here from Norwich University. I so enjoyed that presentation, Jake. Thank you. I'm particularly interested in this learning approach you're taking with Sandbox and the idea that students can be building and practicing prior to a competition. And I wondered if you imagine providing this as a tool for educators as well as for competition participants. I mean, is there potential here that non-competing students would also benefit from learning in these kind of sandboxes?
Nice to see you, Zoe, and thanks for the question. Yes, we are always thinking about those things. We have recently at the CAE strategy meeting, we talked about the possibility of opening this tool up outside of the CAE community for schools that might be interested in being a part of the CAE community in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a possibility. Right now, we've designed the Sandbox to require a .edu email address from a CAE school in order to allow access. But that is something that we're in ongoing talks with the program office on, as far as if we have the resources, shouldn't we make them available more broadly? And I'm glad that you chimed in a little bit, Zoe. We've talked about the Sandbox as kind of the first place that we would prototype an approach for evidencing competencies within a competition. We would hope that someday we'll be able to do that within a contested environment, within the live action of our event. But as you know, the competencies effort is very challenging, and it's nuanced. And so a baby steps approach is very likely to be embedded within our sandbox.
Thank you.
I might tack on as well that I have had some faculty from various CAEs say, do you have a problem with me using this in the classroom? And all I say to that is, well, we're not Amazon or Google who's promising a 99.99% uptime, but we're pretty good. Certainly if you wanted to coordinate with me, contact me and say, hey, I wanted to maybe use some of these activities. I'm really happy to know how people are using this stuff beyond the competition and formally in the classroom.
Andrea.
Hello, my name is Andrea Barrios. I'm with Coastline College in Southern California. And I was curious about, is there a kind of a coaching component to the CAE challenge, kind of similar to what I was able to see in NCL? Is there that kind of part of it? So if I register, then I'm able to see my students who, if we've put a team together, kind of how far along they're how quickly and what they're moving along into.
So that's a very good question. We do not have a formal coaching community in the way that NCL does. All NCAE faculty are able to make an account on our sandbox and within our environment. And the one place that it's easy to observe is within Discord. And so we provide faculty with access to our Discord environment, just like students have. And we can link them to the student team channels where they're talking and working and learning together. We have, I will admit that when I started as an instructor, I was not a Linux guru, and I was not in a great place to support a team that was going to compete in a Linux-based infrastructure event. And I really appreciate the way that James went about making his videos with 230 different index points. Even a faculty member who may not feel like this is their strength can sit down with a student or a group of students in the club and say, hey, let's watch this 5-minute tutorial on how to configure a web server so that it scores in this event, and learn together and really kind of come together and we can help faculty kind of spool themselves up to being great advisors for their teams, even if they don't start out that way. But I hope I've come close to answering your question. You did definitely. And I think that it spawned another question, if you don't mind, just when you or for those who have started kind of coaching their students through this program competition, how did you set it up? Like, what was it, a weekly type of meeting or monthly type of meeting? What was done, kind of what was the scheduling and what was the pace that you would recommend? I'm going to let James take that question. I will note, I won't put it on the screen. I'll refer back to the slide that we showed about the usage of our sandbox, which is decent level of usage, and then lots of usage in the 48 to 72 hours before the competition. And I'll let James talk about our club, but in my experience, you kind of have to let the club do their own thing. And as much as we'd like to say, next week we're going to do this and the week after we're going to do that, as soon as it starts to feel like school, students stop showing up at the club. And so our motto at MV has always been, for our Cyberhawks team, is we eat pizza and teach each other hacking tools. And that's what's kept the students coming to our club events. But James took over the club from me back in, gosh, it was probably 2017. So I'll let him talk a little bit about how our club has evolved.
Yeah, so short answer, I guess, is, yeah, I find that weekly is something that fits into most college students' life schedule and rhythm. They kind of plan things out by the week with work schedules and classes and all that. So it is a good goal to shoot for. For the most part, we try to do once a week, but sometimes twice a week, and then allow students to kind of pick which event to go to, because maybe there's a conflict or whatever. I definitely, as best as I can, spend as much time as I can empowering students to help each other. I definitely do not try to stand in the front of the class and do things. And I find that that's the best thing to encourage, and simply be the person who organizes the resources and get them focused in a good direction. Because a lot of them, I notice, will show up and say, I'm here and I want to do things. Okay, what do you want to do? I have no idea. I just want to do things. And so you can help fill in the things that they should maybe be doing, but just allowing them to chase after it. That's what I find, if you can feed some of those fires, that's really effective. The last little piece of advice is that usually in cyber clubs, you have a very wide range of the more senior people to the newer people. And so a lot of times I'm spending time trying to create little pockets within the club of, okay, the three of you try to work on this because that's appropriate for your skill level. And then the three of you maybe work on this because that's appropriate for your skill level. And then maybe like every other week, try to get them talking to each other so you still have that uniformity across the club. So then it's not entirely, hitting two ends of the spectrum all the time, and people can work on some things, but then also be encouraged to say, hey, yeah, I want to get to where the senior people are, or the senior people can give back by teaching and leading. So I don't know, those are some kind of quick suggestions. And I will say that I do have a couple of videos out there. They're not on the main list of what I want, but if you wanted to email me, you could email me or whatever. And I could send another little video where I have about 25 minutes worth of advice for building clubs, just some of my lessons learned. I'd be happy to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you both. This was a fabulous presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Other questions?
Yeah, Jake, I don't know if you saw chat. Andrew has one in chat for our elevator pitch that we could share with other people. And I got thinking, I know we have some PDFs of advertising related things. I'm not sure where those are off the top of my head, if those are public facing or just sitting in my email somewhere. We could probably share some of those as well, though, for other people to distribute.
We can share them also on the Community of Practice website, Jake, if you want. Decide anything you want to share, we can post that.
That sounds good. Any other questions for James or I before we wrap up? Well, thank you all for being here. Switching back to my host role, Yair and I and Dan Manson have been working to make this Community of Practice event happen. I think the fall series has been wonderful, Yair. Thank you for all of your help putting it together. Between the National Cyber League and Western Region CCDC and our event, I think this was a great way to start with three big competitions. The videos are posted on the website, and we are open to some ideas on what other competitions you would like us to reach out to for presentations in the spring. But I think you'll probably look forward to 3 or 4 presentations of other competitions that would like to come talk to us about their events and how they line up well with students. Any closing thoughts, Yair?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jake. What you're doing is wonderful. We all in the community appreciate all the hard work. I'm gonna just final note, I will be emailing everyone a survey because we need to do assessment of all of our activities for the Community of Practice. So please be aware that's not a phishing email, it's a survey request. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.